South Africa is different. The you who leave South Africa won't be the same as the you who arrived. You'll find that there's nothing ordinary about this place, because you don't just visit South Africa, you will meet South Africa. You will meet the wide open beaches of the Wild Coast and the chief whose ancestors have lived in the hills above the Guanyana River for 1,000 years. You'll meet a taxi driver and a shebeen queen who you will never forget. You'll meet the golden light of the Timbavati as it covers everything in a soft amber glow that reminds you of how things once were and could be again. You'll meet a lady called Dani Anna in Boerkap who will write her recipe for pickled fish on the back of the menu. You will meet a 70-year-old surfer who will tell you about the time he sat on his board listening to a whale whose breathing sounded like the heartbeat of the ocean itself. You will go on a walk at night through the bush that you will never forget, because it was the night you felt you saw the stars for the very first time. You'll have supper under an acacia tree as the sun goes down, and giraffes gather by the watering hole. And years later, you'll find that the call of the hippo still seems to echo through your heart. You will meet South Africa, and you'll never be the same again. South Africa and the things you experience here will change the way you see the world and the way you live your life. Because when you open your arms to embrace this country, you'll find that the you who leave South Africa won't be the same you who arrived. Because when you meet South Africa, you'll find that none of it, not one little bit, is ordinary.
Welcome back to Global Village. I'm Buddy Kunan, and tonight's topic is South Africa. And joining us still is His Excellency Ambassador Martin Slabber, the Ambassador of South Africa to the Philippines. Ambassador Slabber, welcome to our second segment. Let's talk about Freedom Day, which you guys are going to be celebrating in a few days. And again, I mentioned in my opening spiel that it really is a celebration for us all, not just for South Africa. And I'd like to say it's for the entire world.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about Freedom Day. What is it about?
You know, South Africa between 1948 and 1994 had a government that discriminated against people based on the color of their skin. So if you were non-white, you had no right to vote. You couldn't buy a property where you wanted to. You couldn't work where you wanted to. You couldn't get a passport as easily as a white South African could. In 1994, on the 27th of April 1994, which we celebrate today as Freedom Day, South Africa had its first elections where everybody could vote. So 26 million people could vote for the first time on that day. And that election, of course, led to the appointment of Mr. Nelson Mandela as our first democratically elected president. So this year, we are celebrating the 23rd anniversary of Freedom Day. And what you are saying about it not only be for South Africans, but for the whole world is true, because the policy of apartheid, as this racial discrimination policy was called, was declared by the United Nations as a crime against humanity.
Yes.
And it was really not only a fight by South Africans to get rid of it, but it was a fight from people all over the world, including the Philippines. We as South Africa, did not have relations with the Philippines before 1994.
I remember.
We only established, after the end of apartheid, the Philippine government would only establish relations with South Africa.
You know, Ambassador, as a Filipino, I remember this, you know, I was, younger back then, but I had passport, no? And stamped on the passport would be not valid for travel to South Africa.
Yeah.
On every Philippine passport you'd have.
Yeah.
So this just really shows you how much a pariah state South Africa was back
Yes.
then.
Yes.
You know? And that word you mentioned, the big bad A word, which is apartheid.
Yes.
This is an Afrikaans word which means, what is the literal translation of apartheid?
There is not one word to translate it, but apartheid really means to keep separate.
Okay.
That is really what it means.
What was the logic of that? What was the logic of instituting this system? They wanted to keep, unlike now where you have South Africa, which is really a united country and mixed, and you know there's people, equal opportunities really for everyone now. And back then there was an intent really to separate the different races present in South Africa.
Yeah. Well, the way that it was defended by the government at that time is that it is better for people of different cultures to develop separately, to live separately. They would be more comfortable in their own communities. But you know, if you have to be honest about it, buddy, it is a matter of racism.
Absolutely,
Because
yes.
people believe that other people, because they look different, were somehow inferior to them. Also, you know, in the case of South Africa, the white community is a minority community in South Africa. So perhaps there was also an element of fear that if they did not do something like this, then they would just disappear.
Yes,
you know?
yes.
They would, as a white community or an Afrikaans community, they would have no future, and that has been proven to be wrong. I mean, here I'm sitting now 23 years after
An ambassador of
apartheid.
South Africa.
I'm the ambassador of South Africa as a white Afrikaans speaking person.
Amazing.
In a democratic South Africa.
And you know, as you mentioned, '94 was when this officially ended.
Yeah.
And now, fast forward to about over 2 decades. How far has South Africa gone in this time? I mean, I think in the short, it's been a relatively short period since apartheid ended. But I think that the progress and the advancements in society in South Africa have been remarkable.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you just think about it, our economy today, 23 years after 1994, is 4 times bigger than what it was in 1994.
Because now you guys can sell to the world, everything.
No, nobody has placed any sanctions on us. We are open to trade with anybody in the world. People are free to invest in our country, and that has led to the economy expanding 4 times the size of what it was 23 years ago.
That's amazing.
In my own profession, you know, if you talk about relations with the outside world, in 1994 we had 25 embassies internationally, 25 only. Today we have 126.
Amazing. That's amazing. Because when you said 25, it's like Taiwan. So
Yeah,
like
exactly.
a small little country, like a small
Exactly.
place like Taiwan, no? But now
Exactly.
126.
And what many people don't know is that the diplomatic community in South Africa is the largest diplomatic community in the world outside of Washington.
That I didn't know that. That's amazing.
Even bigger, you would think maybe
I
London.
would think London or Paris.
But
or
I mean, part of the reason is that all the African countries are in Pretoria, whereas it is perhaps expensive for them to be all of them in London, and that has enabled us to have the biggest diplomatic community in the world outside Washington.
That is amazing. So it must be a very vibrant diplomatic
Very
circuit,
very
social
vibrant
circuit.
and very busy.
Yeah, a friend of mine, Joey Angeles, is the ambassador
Yes,
in Pretoria, so he
yes.
must be having a lekker time.
Yeah, I hope so.
It must be one cocktail party after another.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about Philippine and South African relations. How would you characterize relations between our 2 countries at present?
I think, well, bear in mind what I just said. You know, we didn't have any relations
Yes.
before 1994. Our embassy in the Philippines were only established in 2006. So, regrettably, because of the system of apartheid, we do not have with the Philippines a long historical relationship or cultural ties or economic ties that naturally bind the countries together. So really what we do, both me and Ambassador Angeles, is we have to build this relationship brick by brick. You know, we had to start from nothing in the last 10 or 15 years. So today, I think we can be happy to say that this relationship is, there's nothing that we argue about, South Africa and the Philippines. And slowly but surely, we are building this relationship economically, politically, culturally, in areas as diverse as science and technology, as agriculture, as mining, as, a wide variety of areas where we're now starting to collaborate on very nice and important projects.
Yes. How about business? How much trade is there happening between South Africa and the Philippines?
At the moment, our trade is still fairly limited. The total trade is only about $250 million a year. We have a number of companies here in the Philippines that have established here in the pharmaceutical business, in mining, in internet services. There are a number of Filipino companies that have now established their presence in South Africa.
Really?
Yeah.
Which companies?
Well, I mean, the most recent one is the Liweiwei Corporation, who makes these Oishi snacks.
Okay.
They are putting up...
no, it's huge. They're huge.
they're all over it.
They're all over, absolutely.
It's a big company.
I'm not surprised.
So then maybe the next time you go, you can buy your Oishi snacks in South Africa.
Very good, very good.
And pharmaceutical companies are there. Unilab is establishing a presence there. The International Container Service.
Yes, of course. ICTSI has been, their headquarters is in Cape Town.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yes.
they've actually been there for quite some time already.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think for Philippine investors, South African, the economy and the society is very developed. I like to say it's in Africa, but it's pretty first world when you think about it. And there really is, I think, opportunity for Philippine investors to go there, especially maybe small, maybe entrepreneurs who would like to bring their business models from the Philippines and make it work in South Africa.
Yeah, that is true. And what I think makes it interesting for investors to go to South Africa, it also opens a market to the rest of the Southern African region.
Definitely.
Because a lot of companies have South Africa as a base, but then they work all over the Southern African region.
Well, Ambassador, something that I hope that you can do while you're here is I hope you can bring Nando's over to the Philippines. I heard these guys are in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur. And why should the Malaysians be so lucky, huh?
Yeah.
I mean, it really is, I think, your Nando's is one of the most delicious roasted chicken chains I've ever been to in my life, and it's a pity they're not here yet. I hope you can convince them to come.
I have, actually,
everyone loves chicken.
Everybody loves chicken. That's right. They'll have to compete with, the chicken from Bacolod and so on. But actually, when I first arrived here, I didn't think Nando's would do well because it was not my impression that Filipino people are that fond of spicy food.
No.
But everybody who goes to South Africa come back and tell me why is Nando's not here? So I did speak to them, and I think in their long-term strategy they do plan to.
Well, fingers crossed. We will see them here in Manila sooner than later. Yes, sir.
I hope so.
Ambassador, we have to pause for a break. When we come back, Madel Martin of representing South African Airways is going to join us. And we're going to talk about tourism, which is a highlight of this program and one of my favorite topics because South Africa is such a beautiful country. So guys, stick around because more of South Africa when Global Village returns.